Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the StackVision 7.3 in a Nutshell webinar. I'm Taylor Hempel, and I'm a marketing specialist here at ESC Spectrum. Today, Senior QA Michelle Staniff will share with you the new features and enhancements in the StackVision 7.3 Data Acquisition System update. Just a reminder to hold any questions you have until the end and type them in the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen. After the presentation is over, I will read out the questions to Michelle, and she will answer them to the best of her ability. With that being said, let's begin, Michelle.
Thank you, Taylor. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Staniff, and I'm going to go over the new features and bug fixes in StackVision 7.3, which was released on Tuesday. Here are our installation requirements. Here is our support timeline for both the server and the client. Note that we will end support for Windows Server 2016 and SQL 2016 at the end of this year. And thank you to all of our beta testers. If you don't have a test server and would like to participate in beta testing, we can always set up a server for you using a backup of your database. So let's start with the new features. Alarm notifications and email groups. This allows users to manually create email groups and import EAF files. You're also able to edit email groups without logging into Stack Studio. The new Email Groups tab is under Configuration, User Accounts. To manually create an email group, click the Add icon and enter the email group name. Then select from available users or enter new users in the Custom Addresses section. To convert an existing EAF file to an email group, click the Import button and select the EAF file to import. The EAF file name becomes the email group name. After importing the EAF file, StackVision users that are enabled and have valid email addresses will display in Email Users and are available for selection. Users that are not configured in StackVision will display in Custom Addresses. After creating the email group in StackVision, you can assign the group to alarms in Stack Studio Alarm Messages. New columns include refresh type, alarm on each interval, email group, combine into single email, email subject, email body, notify on return to normal email subject, and return to normal email body. These variables can be used in the email subject, email body, return to normal email subject, and return to normal email body fields. SEDRI, update templates. The SEDRI template reports have been updated to keep track with SEDRI regulatory reporting. Here's an example of a Part 63 SEDRI downtime report. Other reports affected include malfunction, deviation, and SIM summary. New performance specs for CGAs. This provides the ability to determine the pass-fail status of CGAs based on the new Appendix F Part 60 quality assurance procedures. The change to the alternate CGA criteria went into effect on May 30th of this year. The old CGA spec was plus or minus 15% of the average audit value or plus or minus 5 ppm, whichever was greater. The new specs are span greater than 50 ppm. In this case, it will use 15% of reference method or plus or minus 5 ppm. Span greater than 20 ppm or less than or equal to 50 ppm, it will use 15% of reference method or plus or minus 3 ppm. And if the span is less than or equal to 20 ppm, it will use 15% of the reference method or plus or minus 2 ppm. Note that StackVision checks the 15% of reference method first to determine pass-fail. If it does not pass using the reference method, then it checks the alternative specification. Here is an example. Currently, the span is 10, and from the reference method, we see that it is more than the allotted limit. So it moves to the alternative method, and we see that it is within plus or minus 2 ppm, so it uses this method. And in the screenshot here, we see that the test passed using APS. Dashboards allow users to set graph min and max on a trending object. This gives users the ability to change graph min and graph max on trend objects without using Stack Studio. The settings are per trend and per parameter and are saved to the database. They do not affect Stack Studio parameter graph min and max settings. Click on the parameter icon to change the graph min and graph max settings. Graph auto-scaling is enabled by default. The default values are from Stack Studio parameter settings. When graph auto-scaling is disabled and custom values are entered, the graph range will adjust accordingly. ECMPS, new JSON format. StackVision 7.3 now supports exporting monitoring plans, emissions files, and QA/QC files in JSON format. To create a JSON QA cert or emissions file, generate the EDR as usual, and 2 files will be created, XML and JSON. Importing a JSON monitoring plan. You must get your JSON monitoring plan from the EPA, not StackVision. To import the JSON monitoring plan into Stack Studio, select the JSON file type in the dropdown. When you save a monitoring plan in either JSON or XML format, you will see this warning. And we highly recommend that you export the existing XML monitoring plan before importing and saving the JSON file. After importing and saving the JSON monitoring plan, you can export it for evaluation in ECMPS 2.0. Note that you will not be able to view the JSON monitoring plan in the monitoring plan report. It currently only supports XML. We encourage everyone to upgrade to 7.3 and create and evaluate JSON files in ECMPS 2.0. Report any issues you find to us, and we'll resolve them as quickly as possible. MATS 2.0 is not part of StackVision 7.3. We're currently working on it, and it will be in the 7.4 release, which is scheduled for November. OPC Data Mapper Design Report. We added an OPC Data Mapper Design Report to more easily view OPC mappings without having to open the OPC Data Mapper application. OPC mappings can now be viewed on client machines, and the new report is located in the System Design folder. Here's an example of the new report. Process now, average, data rules, and sub-non 75 task performance improvements. The purpose of this was to resolve issues and increase performance of the average, sub-non 75, and data rules process now tasks. SQL overhead is also reduced when the average and data rules tasks run by chunking data processing and reducing the size of SQL transactions. These metrics are for 15-minute data averages for roughly 100 parameters. Based on these testing conditions, the changes resulted in a 15,000% improvement in quarterly data processing times. The data rules run times are pretty much the same, but by chunking data processing and reducing SQL transaction sizes, we fixed timeout issues. Data rules is now more reliable when processing large data sets and also when running asynchronously with other process now tasks. The sub-non 75 fixes apply specifically to simple hour before substitution. We fixed unnecessary lookback behavior, which greatly improves the performance. Based on these testing conditions, the changes resulted in a 360,000% improvement in quarterly data processing times. Permit PMA. Add hours lookback time interval to permit PMA. This provides the ability for permit PMA to support hourly intervals, which will allow an hour lookback for PMA. Time intervals are now extended to 4 digits. Here's an example of an hourly time interval for permit PMA. Note that the -TI switch specifies the target interval. Here are some examples of time intervals which are located in Stack Studio, System Settings, Time Intervals. The interval size has increased to 9,999. Reports. Remove user status report. The user status report was removed because other reports provide the same information. Let's move to the bug fixes. Active Alarms manual refresh should go to the first page. Manual refresh used to stay on the current page. Now it goes back to page 1, and auto refresh stays on the current page. Calibration status. Tooltip was rounding incorrectly. As you can see here, the tooltip was rounding values with different rules than the actual parameter widget. Now the tooltip uses the same rounding rules as the widget. Calibration status. Improper graph min-max if drift and OOC are missing. The problem here was that if a parameter did not have maintenance or out of control error limits configured, calibration status would recalculate graph min and max values each time the graph refreshed. This caused graph min and max values to be extremely large as time passed during the phase. The calculation has now been fixed and uses the phase expected value, an instrument span, plus an extra buffer to ensure that poll data can be displayed and graphed. Calibration status, parameter widgets not showing underscore characters and parameter names. Here, PMR should display as PM_R. Scientific notation displays in summary and options. When generating a line or scatter chart with small values, scientific notation displayed in both the summary and in options. Now, full values display and automatic scientific notation is prevented. Line charts. Reset zoom does not reset timeline. The problem was that after zooming in on a line chart and then resetting the zoom, the timeline was not resetting to the default range. And this is now fixed in 7.3. Charts. Point and tooltip sometimes doesn't match actual value. With very small data sets, the tooltip wasn't always displaying the actual value. Now the tooltip matches the y-axis values. Charts. Small data sets display as 0 on the y-axis. Y-axis values are now displaying correctly. And another charts bug, zooming not working as expected with small data sets. Now the y-axis values display correctly. Charts. Current week in quick select results in incorrect date range. Here, the start and end dates should have been 2/26/2023 and 3/4/2023. The current week now displays the correct start and end dates. Dashboards. Errors exception if window does not have focus when math constant is sent. When downloading a constant to a controller, a message appears to let you know that the download was successful. If you moved focus from the dashboard window, for example, minimize the window, an exception would display. This has been fixed in 7.3 and also includes the other features where this could have happened: dashboards, charts, and calibration status. Dashboards. Downloading multiple constants at once only downloads the last one. This happened if the downloads were done consecutively and too quickly. Now all math constants will take effect regardless of how quickly they're sent from dashboards. Y-axis values not displaying in proper format. This was a random issue where the y-axis values were not formatted correctly. This has been fixed so that the values display in the correct format. Data rules. Reason code, action code not applied to last minute of acknowledged alarms. When data rules triggered alarms and you assigned a reason code and/or action code on acknowledgement, the last minute of the alarm would be missing the assigned code. And if the alarm was only 1 minute long, no code would be assigned at all. Now, assigning a reason code and/or action code through acknowledging data rules alarms applies codes to all minutes of the alarm after acknowledgement. Min to cal allows negative numbers. In previous releases, min to cal was treating a negative value as a blank when creating a calibration. This caused the phase status error and resulted in an ECMPS critical error. Now min to cal allows for negative values to be recorded or replaced with 0. This was done by adding a new switch -NV negative or -NV 0. If -NV is not configured, the value will remain blank for negative values. Opacity editor and report not using correct decimal precision. The opacity parameter was configured to 1 decimal in Stack Studio for both the decimal positioner and the round precision, but the opacity editor and the opacity report both report the data out to 2 decimal places. Now the correct precision displays in both the opacity editor and the report. OPC Data Manager Service. Polling does not apply default reason code, action code, method code. When using OPC as a polling method, the default reason code, action code, and method codes were not being applied unless added to the OPC data mapper. This has been fixed and the codes are now applied. OPC Data Manager Service, logged exception if average value record ID is greater than integer size. When polling strings using OPC UA and the database was large enough that the record for the inserted value was larger than the integer could support, an exception occurred which prevented polling. The fix for this is that IDs up to big int values are now supported. Permit PMA task fails if there is no operating time for configured interval. Process now failed the permit PMA task due to offline op time for the configured interval. Here we see that the 1-month interval did not have any op time for the month, so the permit PMA task failed. In 7.3, process now passes the permit PMA task when there is offline op time for the configured interval. Process now average task, failing on out of range values. When values are extremely large or extremely small, the average task would fail with 1 or more errors occurred. Now a more meaningful message displays indicating that the values are out of range. Limit parameter field does not save properly. When adding and saving a limit parameter to a server channel in Stack Studio server channels, the parameter was not saved the first time. This has been fixed in 7.3. And those are the new features and bug fixes in StackVision 7.3. Please notify support if you see any issues with the release. And are there any questions?
All right. It doesn't seem like we have any questions. Michelle, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just notify support if you see any issues with the release or if you have any questions, and we will help you.
Sounds great. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. Y'all have a great rest of your day.